All right, so as we were saying, Sharon, Joy, and the 5 J's. You know, everybody's name starts with J. So it's just my honor and privilege this morning to introduce our speaker for today. Dr. Jim Lockard is here, and he is the author of this wonderful book, Sacred Thinking. And it's Awakening to Your Inner Power. And we do have copies of this book in the bookstore. So if you'd like him to sign it, I think he probably would after a service. But it's a wonderful book and very centered in and coming from that place in the science of mind and making it practical and useful for everybody. And he has been in the ministry for 20 years. Before that, he was in law enforcement. And I think my experience of Dr. Jim is he is authentic, he is heart-centered, and he's very funny. So, but I hope I haven't set you up. But anyway, so please help me welcome Dr. Jim Lockard.
Thank you. And my mic just fell off. So that's pretty funny. Huh? Can we get the first slide up, the title slide up, please? So Simi Valley, a lot of people don't know where that is. Oh, I have a question. Who brought the beautiful flowers? Can I have permission to set them here during the talk? Because my slides tend to go to the bottom of the... They're plugged in. Will they reach if they go here?
Is it on the other side?
Oh my. Sorry, I didn't mean to. Look at this. Yay! Can we get a few more people up to help? Just a minor. How many religious scientists does it take to move a vase of flowers? Thank you, and I do apologize. Okay. So people don't seem to know where Simi Valley. How many don't know where Simi Valley is? Just a few. That's about right. Okay. It's just north of the San Fernando Valley, which is known as the Valley in LA. So if you get down, so we're a little further distanced from LA than the Valley, and we're the next valley up. And Simi means windy, and it is. So it's about 130,000 people live there, and we have 3 Walmarts and 2 Targets, and the Ronald Reagan Library. So we've got just about everything you'd want. So that's where I am, and it's great to be here. I love everything about this place, this center and the surrounding area, and I have great friends here. And I was here for Reverend Madeline's ordination. Was my first visit up here, and really enjoyed it. Just so majestic and beautiful. I was just in Alaska a couple weeks ago, and this kind of reminds me of some elements of Alaska, minus the water. So, but great to be here. So I want to talk about the hero's journey. And one of the hero's journey is what is called a motif in mythology. So in mythology, by the way, is not stuff that isn't true. It's stuff that conveys a deeper truth than can be conveyed in a linear fashion. So myth really speaks to, it may be a fictional creature or a fictional person in myth, but the principles being expressed are true. So what is our mythology is what is essentially true about us that maybe can't be understood or expressed directly through our ordinary behavior. So another example of a motif in myth is a virgin birth. Okay, if you go back to biblical times, there were lots of virgin births because it was a way of conveying the idea that this is a very special person. It's confusing, but that's kind of because everybody goes right to how did that happen or how did that not happen, but that's an example of a motif. So the motif of the hero's journey is the motif of really going out, leaving what is known, going into the unknown and finding yourself there, and then returning to where you started as a transformed being. So that's kind of the overall elements of it. Joseph Campbell, the mythologist, is certainly one of the greatest sources of understanding that, but the hero's journey is part of so much of everyday storytelling and so forth. The Wizard of Oz, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Treasure Island, Moby Dick, they're all hero's journey stories. And one of the main elements of understanding the hero's journey is that all of your problems aren't necessarily because something is wrong. Okay, has anyone in here ever had a problem? Okay. We're just you're thinking about, oh my God, how am I going to deal with this? Or there's something very difficult on the horizon that you're anticipating, and you spend a lot of time kind of maybe ruminating about it. Ruminating is thinking about something in a negative way, kind of fear-based thinking. It's a fancy word for worrying. So we ruminate and we picture what can go wrong, and we think about maybe that we're inadequate to a task or something like that. And the hero's journey is something that we go on, and you either go on it voluntarily or involuntarily, or you can deny the journey altogether. So we'll talk about some of those steps and how they show up, and as we go forward. I think I went the wrong way. Okay, there we are. Now this is just a quick and dirty kind of a schematic of what the journey looks like. It says here, the standard path of the mythological adventure of the hero is a magnification of the formula represented in the rites of passage: separation, initiation, and return. So separation is where you are called out of ordinary life in some way. It may be a physical journey, or it may just be a journey where you stay in place, but something is transpiring, things are changing. So many of us are on many hero's journeys at one time. A hero's journey can last a weekend, or it can last a decade, or a whole life. So the first step is the call. And the call usually begins within you, where something inside a small voice says, time to be different, time to go into something new, time to leave this behind, time to make a change. And we're usually really, really, really good at ignoring that initial voice. Okay, it'll be okay, we'll just muddle through, and we'll force ourselves to move through something. Or sometimes the call is involuntary. It used to be you could get drafted into the military. That's the beginning of a hero's journey. Talk about getting pulled out of something involuntarily. Or back in the day, the people that sailed over here with Columbus, for example, were conscripted sailors. Conscripted meant that when they were going to try to sail this way around a flat earth, they couldn't get a whole lot of sailors that wanted to go with them. So they went down to the bars and taverns near the seaport, and they'd throw a blanket over somebody's head, hit them with a big club, and they'd wake up on the ship. So that's an example of being involuntarily put into a hero's journey. Sometimes you're enticed. There are wonderful Celtic legends about a fairy or a leprechaun will come through a hedge and entice someone to go through the hedge, and when the person steps through the hedge, they're in a different world. So there's all kinds of entry points, and it is possible in many cases to deny that journey. Usually that's from the call from within. We say, no, I'm not going to, it would upset too many people, it would cost me money, it would put me in danger or a threat to what is, so I say no to the call. And when we say no to the call, we suffer in some way or another. Now, you may suffer when you say yes to the call, but the suffering is in service of moving into something greater. Okay? So the call is the separation. The initiation is what we first go into. This is Dorothy with the Munchkins. Okay, the storm was what caused the separation. You ever had a storm in your life that stirred everything up and pulled you out of what you were in before? The storm could be a bankruptcy, a divorce, a loss of a loved one, a significant illness, something like that. And you're pulled out of what you were in, and you find yourself in an unknown land. And in order to get through the unknown land, you have to learn some new things. And the idea is it's a path of self-discovery. And then through the initiation, it continuously gets more and more. If you follow an Indiana Jones movie, you know, he's teaching in his classroom, and somebody says, hey, there's a relic in some mountain somewhere, and off he goes. And there's a whole lot of adventures to get to the mountain. And that's kind of that initiation phase. But then once you get to the mountain, it really gets challenging. See, once Dorothy got to the Emerald City, then the challenge was presented. Bring me the broom of the Wicked Witch of the West. So when you get near the goal or the jewel, everything is stepped up. It becomes more difficult, more challenging. So boot camp is the initiation for the soldier. Going into combat is where the real challenge is, and what you have to call forth out of yourself to meet that challenge is what is really important. And then the return is once you've found the new version of you. Okay, you can go back and look at the Holy Grail, the Grail mythology and so forth. What is the Holy Grail? It's not a chalice. That's the symbol of the Grail. The Grail is the Christ consciousness within you. So you seek to find that Christ consciousness within you. You seek to find the brave person within you. You seek to find the loving parent within you through the hero's journey, and you return and you offer it to the community that you left. And sometimes the community says, oh, that's great. And sometimes the community says, we're really not interested. So upon the return, the transformed version of you may be accepted or rejected. Now to the hero, that doesn't matter. So part of the challenge of being the hero is having the courage to live from the new center, even though it may not be accepted by the people. You ever notice that people don't like it when you change? I mean, they complain about the way you are, and then you change, and then they complain that you're changing. You know, that's kind of human nature, because we get attached to the way people are. You know, people say to you, what are you smiling about? You're never happy, you know. It can even be a good thing, you know, and your behavior is different, but the fact that it's different creates a dissonance within the person, and they want to figure out, okay, let's get you back where you belong in my eyes. So it's hard to change around people that know you very well quite often, okay? So Carol Pearson, who was a student of Joseph Campbell, and now she is the provost at Pacifica University down in Santa Barbara, where Joseph's archives are, and she's written some wonderful books. Heroes take journeys, confront dragons, and discover the treasure of their true selves. So the journey you take, again, may not be a journey of distance. It may be a journey in consciousness. And the dragons we confront are our own demons, our own fear-based thoughts, our own lack of self-awareness that are brought to us by the world around us, by the people we confront or meet as we go through. Dorothy goes to Oz and gets through the Munchkin situation and discovers the Yellow Brick Road, which is the pathway to the Emerald City, which is her next stop. And along the way, she meets three people who are going to be her allies: someone with no brains, someone with no heart, and a coward. So this is like a typical management team that's being put together. To go off to see the wizard, right? But see, they're not separate from her. They're the faculties within her that need to awaken. In order for her to be successful in her transformative journey, she has to awaken in mind, awaken in heart, and she has to find her courage. So these are her teachers and supporters in helping her to do that. So along the way in the journey, we meet teachers, some of whom are negative and some of whom are positive. And it's up to us to discern who is what and to glean what we need to glean from them. If we reject the negative teacher outright, we lose their lesson. If we embrace the positive teacher too much, we fall into attachment. So we have to remain or continue the capacity to be somewhat detached and be doing our inner work as we go. Again, from Carol Pearson, from her book, Awakening the Heroes Within. For the hero's journey is first about taking a journey to find the treasure of your true self, and then about returning home to give your gift to help transform the kingdom, and in the process, your own life. When I was in Fort Lauderdale, I was a co-pastor there for about 5 years, and that was my home center. That's where I took all my classwork when I lived there. And at the time I was co-pastor there with Dr. Arlene Bump, who some of you may know, we went to about 900 or 1,000 members. And about half of those, a little more than half, were members of the gay and lesbian community. And it was very interesting when you talked about the hero's journey, they got it. Because the process of coming out was the true hero's journey. For most of them. Now, that's beginning to shift. Now kids are able to kind of understand and own their sexual identity and orientation much younger in some cases. But in those days, pretty uniformly, anyone who came out against the will of their family, against the will perhaps of their employers and friends. And it took a great deal of courage. And if they denied the call to discover and really live their true identity, they suffered. We had a support group at the center that time for the children of gay parents. Because before they came out, they got married, they had kids. And then these were mostly the fathers, and who left the mother to move in with another man. And the children of those previous liaison had quite a journey ahead of them. So we had a separate support group of about 30 or 40 children of gay parents to help them to kind of make sense of that aspect of their lives. But if you think about it, the separation where you begin to become aware, not necessarily, certainly not from birth in most cases, but at some point you begin to become aware that, hey, I don't fit the mold. That what's being expected of me in terms of going to prom or all the dating rituals of adolescence and all that stuff, and the stuff I'm supposed to be attracted to, I'm not attracted to. And the things I'm not supposed to be attracted to, I am attracted to. And it's been made clear to me that I better keep that to myself. And then at some point, you just can't do that anymore. I have a good friend who came out to his family at Thanksgiving dinner. And believe it or not, it was a shock. Now, for most people, you say, oh, I've known forever. But, the parents were in such heavy denial. It was a shock. And I said, why did you choose Thanksgiving dinner? He said, because I was just so angry. I was just so mad at them. And I wanted to hurt them. Because he had denied the call for so long. So when we deny the call, we may feel like we're fitting in, but if we don't fit in, we don't fit in. And we suffer as a result, trying to live a life that isn't yours. So I find that within that community, many people, when you start talking about the hero's journey, I'm right with you. They get it. Because that is a true hero's journey. And then quite often they would return with, hey, this is who I am. And the family would say, get out. Never darken my door again. I had one of our members of our center had contracted AIDS we lost about 25% of our congregation in the late 80s, early 90s. And I was a practitioner at the time, and I was going to visit. He was home in kind of a hospice situation, and his family had come down, from Alabama. And I talked, to the fellow who I'd been in class with, and I knew him. And as I was getting up to leave, he sat up and grabbed my arm, and he said, is Jesus going to let me into heaven? And I said, yeah. Jesus loves you. That's what Jesus is about. I was a little shocked by that, but when you're in that situation, a lot of old stuff comes up. So I went in the living room and I was talking to his parents, and they said, "We know he's going to hell. And we're letting him know that unless he is saved between now and the time he dies, he'll go to hell." And I said, "Well, that's too bad. That's too bad that your God isn't a God of love." You know? So the journey can get complicated. When we don't release what needs to go, and it stays there as a fear-based idea, it can show up at any point in time. You know? So there you have it. Joseph Campbell says, "A hero ventures forth from the world of common day into a region of supernatural wonder. Fabulous forces are there encountered, and a decisive victory is won. The hero comes back from this mysterious adventure with the power to bestow boons on his fellow man." And that just may be the awareness of something that you weren't aware of before, the awareness of a greater sense of love, a greater capacity to be willing to be open and receptive to other people and let them be who they are. It's kind of a breaking out of the old strict standards of how we are to be together in a tribal sense and moving to a bigger idea, whatever that looks like. So that journey is really an essential element of how we go forward in life. This is sort of, again, a schematic, and part of the journey are in the known and part is in the unknown, and I'm not going to go through what all this is. But basically, what's going on in the journey is a lot of internal processing, a realignment of our subconscious mind. How we process who we are and how we process our relationship to the world, the belief structures that we have been, kind of inculcated with as we grew up often begin to crack and fall apart at this time. Adolescence is kind of a time of awakening for many people. Going away to college, where you begin to encounter different ideas than you're used to encountering, or different way people living differently, or being more open or more closed, depending on what it is. And you see so many parents today trying to shelter their children from that experience as they grow up. I want to make sure my kids they're in the right mindset for the rest of their lives, and rather than turning them loose to the messiness of life. But if we don't learn to encounter the messiness of life, we can never find our true heroic nature. It stays locked up. So the only way we grow is by submitting ourselves to the problems and vicissitudes of life. As Dr. Arlene Bump says, we have to get out on the skinny branches and trust that they won't break off. And if they do break off, you get up and dust yourself off and move forward. Let's see. The big question is whether you're going to be able to say a hearty yes to your adventure, as Joseph says. Because many of us spend a lot of time trying to keep that adventure from happening. And you can see people that do that. They become, it builds up the shadow self, the repression of things, and we become fearful, closed, we become bitter and angry. We become cynical. Cynicism is a sure sign that the hero's journey has been denied. So what challenge or adventure has called you forward in the past year? Where have you maybe heard the little whisper or the scream that it's time to break forward? Has there been a storm in your life that has carried you involuntarily out of whatever kind of consciousness you were in that's requiring you to adapt to a new way of being? And have we seen that as the enemy, or have we seen that as part of the natural process of life? We have to learn to embrace the storms. We have to learn to, once we get up and dust ourselves off and get the poor wicked witch of the east out from under the house, to go forward and to see what's there for us. What is this leading toward is a great way to look at it. Curiosity. There's no growth in comfort. Comfort is overrated. Yet that's often what we seek. Just leave me alone. I want to be in peace. Stop the boat from rocking. But it's the boat's nature to rock. And it's your nature to master the rocking. And that's what we have to own and understand. How have you come more into alignment with your authentic self? And have you? What is your authentic self? It's the part of you that won't be quiet. It's the part of you that will continue to urge you forward even when you think you got everything set. It's the part of you that says, no, 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 no. This is not who you are. You're not living out loud. The authentic self is represented in the Garden of Eden by the serpent of all beings. The serpent is the only one in Genesis that told the truth. The serpent is that thing that slithers through the thicket of your denial and your worrying and taps you on the shoulder with the truth. As he said to Eve, God's lying to you. If you eat of the fruit of that tree, you will not die. And she did, and they didn't. A hero's journey to leave the Garden of Eden, the Garden of Comfort, was Spirit's choice to come into form. That's what that story is really about. It wasn't a fall, it was a rise. But at the time, the snake was a good thing in mythology. If you were rich, you had snakes in your house to eat the vermin. The Pharaoh had the Uraeus serpent coming out of his headdress, which is the representation of the sixth chakra energy of the divine made form. Yet for most of us in Bible study, we were told a different story. As my friend Charles Getty says, one of our ministers, he says, you were deposited on this planet without an instruction manual, and you were misinformed. What choice point have you been or are you now faced with? The choice points are the moments of decision where we make a choice to go forward into what is calling us, even though it may be very, very scary or very uncomfortable or very much into the unknown, or we make the choice to know, I'm going to stay where I am in consciousness and try to ride it out. And these choice points can be very, very, very difficult. That's why that's one of the best things a practitioner can do with you is help you to be courageous through those choice points by knowing the truth for you. And the journey requires letting go of the predetermined ideals that hold you captive. Usually that's a statement that begins with, I'm only a. Okay. Decision to take your unique journey, because yours won't look like anybody else's. In the Arthurian legends, when the knights left the round table and went out into the forest, they cut a pathway where there was none. Those that followed an established path always got into trouble. The path is not the path that others have that others have gone down. Your path does not exist until you create it. A strong desire to discover your true self, even though it may be disturbing, and to live from that self. In a practical way, heroes need courage and care. You need a heroic support system, people that will say, I think you're crazy, but I support you. Strong ego development, a willingness to be secure. You know, to say, I've got whatever I need. This teaching says one basic thing that's so critical here. Whatever I need, I already have within me. One power. Vision and clarity of mind, which we get through spiritual practices, meditation, affirmative prayer, journaling, all those kinds of things. Commitment to his or her soul's journey. Your soul's journey, by the way, has nothing to do with your career or your relationships or any of that. It doesn't care. Your soul doesn't care about appearances. Your soul doesn't care what other people think. It doesn't care what you think. It wants what it wants. It wants to experience the infinite by means of you. And it will disrupt all of your plans. The John Lennon quote that God laughs at our plans is about speaking of the quality of soul. Soul is on a journey, and if we pay attention, we get to go along for the ride. But the intellect has to learn to follow rather than lead. To to seek the treasure of the true self, the grail, the jewel point. Joseph Campbell says it's always in the cave you're afraid to enter. But when you go into that cave, sure enough, there it is. And Jean Houston, another great mind, says, and so I ask you to reflect on this. What would you be like if you started today to make the most of the rest of your life? If you turned a corner and awoke? What if nothing in the past has anything to do with what's next? What if you made yourself available to your destiny with no preconceived ideas? What would result? Chaos. That's what would result. There's no question about it. All creativity comes out of chaos. All moving forward comes out of chaos. Chaos doesn't have to be like walking a tightrope. It can be like walking up to someone you don't really know and introducing yourself. We don't have to do great things that impact thousands of people, but we have to step outside of our fear, whatever that might be. So the heroes, people like this, in both cases were thrust into their heroism. Mandela, and this girl's name is blanking, but she's the one that was shot because she was going to school. Thank you, Malala. You know, they didn't sit there the day of and say, okay, I'm going to be a hero today. It was brought upon them. The storm came to them. But they responded in ways that spoke to our souls, which is why we admire them. It's interesting. We don't hold up as heroes the people that do what we do every day. And yet we put so much energy into doing what we do every day. Maybe that's not where the energy's supposed to be. Kind of interesting. So out of this talk, I hope you go home with a lot of questions and very few answers. Answers are overrated. It's the questions we live in that determine the quality of our life. Thank you. And namaste.